and is also chairman of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence. Also joining us is Congresswoman Mimi Walters of California. She serves on both the Judiciary and Transportation Committees. Good to see you both, Representatives. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Congressman King, what can you tell us about Paul Ryan this weekend? Do you think he's going to take this job?
I would certainly hope he does. I can understand why he'd be reluctant to. I mean, Paul is certainly has tremendous status. He's a very smart guy. He's committed to the Republican Party, to true conservative principles. He has the proven record. He has to decide, though, whether or not it's worth for him to make the sacrifice, and it really would be a sacrifice. There's no glory in this job. There's no perks in this job. This is year-round, every day of the year you're working on it. One, as far as policy, as far as managing the House, as far as being involved in campaign fundraising, as being the public face of the party, and at the same time, there's going to be many people within the party taking shots at him, as well as the Democrats who will be well organized. Having said all that, I think he'd be an outstanding speaker. I would fully support him. I think he's the one person who could bring the party together. Not so much for his sake, but for our sake, I certainly hope he decides to run.
Yeah, Congresswoman, I mean, bringing the party together is really a critical point here. What would you like to see take place? And do you think that that person is out there to actually cater to both sides or all the divisions that are pretty evident today within the party?
Listen, I remember what Ronald Reagan used to say. If I could get 80% of what I want, then it's a win. And both sides have to give a little bit. I do believe we will find somebody talented to lead us and to unite us if Paul decides he does not want to take on the speakership. But I also really hope he decides that he wants to do this. He would be the right person for this job. And, you know, we've got to do the American people's work. And I think he is the perfect person to lead us. So my hope is he comes back to Washington, D.C. next week and says, I'm ready to take on the leadership job.
And you think we'll find out next week?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope we do.
Plenty to talk about with you both. I want to find out from you who you think are the alternatives. If not, Congressman and Congresswomen, stay with us. First, though, we want to get an in-depth look at just how Congressman Paul Ryan arrived at this crucial moment. Fox News senior correspondent Eric Shawn with that angle. Good morning to you, Eric.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. Will he or won't he? Well, we may have that answer, as the Congresswoman said, by the time Congress reconvenes next week. Paul Ryan spending this long weekend with his family trying to decide if he will take that promotion.
If Paul Ryan runs, I mean, clearly he'd be somebody that I would support.
I think Paul Ryan's the right person to do this.
And it seems everyone at the office is pushing him to be the boss. But what if you don't want it? Ryan privately considering making the move to House Speaker, we're told, spending this weekend at home in Janesville, Wisconsin, mulling it over with his family. Major considerations are his wife, Jana, their 3 young children, Liza, Charlie, and Sam. Ryan has called the speakership a job for empty nesters. Family versus duty. Can they be reconciled?
He likes to go back home on the weekends to Wisconsin to spend time with those kids. So there's that element of it. He's also trying to think about whether or not this is a job he really wants.
Ryan, of course, will have to corral the rebellious conservatives of the Freedom Caucus, the bloc of 40 who have already helped dump both John Boehner and Kevin McCarthy from the top spot. But last year, Ryan told the Associated Press this about why he refuses to move up. Quote, "One of the reasons why I've always passed elected leadership positions up in the House, you know, speaker, leader, all the things people ask you to run for, is because it takes you away from your family even more. I've made career decisions based on family balance, and part of that is because of my own upbringing and my own childhood."
Ryan, knowing him a little bit, cares about this country, loves his country, and whether or not he does this, he's going to do what I think is right for his family and right for the country.
Well, you know, when he was 15 years old, Ryan found his alcoholic father dead in bed of an apparent heart attack, a searing trauma that clearly has shaped him. That means his decision will likely be far more personal than political. Maria?
Interesting. Thanks very much. Eric Shawn with the latest there, and more now with Congressman Peter King of New York and Congresswoman Mimi Walters of California. Congresswoman Mimi, we were just talking about Paul Ryan being the sort of the shoo-in here, but if he says no, who else is on the bench, would you say? I mean, if not him, who?
Well, there's been talk about perhaps having an interim speaker until the next Congress is elected. People like John Klein, who has announced that he's going to retire, or Candace Miller, who has also announced that she is going to retire, perhaps having somebody just serve out the rest of this Congress. Both of those would be great people to lead us. And just a couple names.
Yeah, I guess, Congressman King, well, if you have anybody to add to that, Congressman King, do so. But I want to get your take on really the Benghazi committee at this point. You know, here you have Kevin McCarthy making that statement about the Benghazi committee being political a week and a half ago. This morning, you've got a GOP investigator saying Republicans on the Benghazi panel fired him over a Clinton focus. How would you characterize the status of this Benghazi committee at this point?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I think there are very real issues about Benghazi going back to the preparation as far as security, also the aftermath where obviously misstatements and in many cases lies were told. So there are real issues there. That's number one. Secondly, I'm not involved with the committee, but I do know Trey Gowdy, and I have a tremendous respect for him. And having been in Congress now a long time, I've never seen an investigation where so much has been kept behind closed doors, so much has been kept away from the media, and that's a real plus for Trey Gowdy. Very few items have been leaked out. He has a professional staff. So to me, this shows that he is very intent, very serious about getting the job done. There are no cheap shots here. As far as that one staffer, I've also been in Congress long enough to know that, again, I don't know what happened here, but you can get people who get rubbed the wrong way. They end up having an axe to grind. They can take things out of context. So if I have to decide between Trey Gowdy and an anonymous staffer or a previously unknown staffer, I will side with Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, and I guess, Congressman Walters, you got to remember that we did learn about the email scandal and the private server as a result of the information and much of the reporting within the Benghazi committee.
4 Americans died in Benghazi, and we have to get to the bottom of why they died. And this hearing has been all about getting to the facts. And it's important that we have these hearings. And Secretary Clinton just happened to be Secretary of State at the time. And so naturally, you know, her name's going to come up in these hearings. But it doesn't stop us from doing our work. We have got to get to the bottom of what happened.
Understood. Yeah, Congressman King, let me ask you before you go on this Iran missile test that we're learning today. Breaking news that there's reports that Iran is testing long-range ballistic missiles. Semi-official news agency is reporting that the country has successfully test-fired a new guided long-range ballistic surface-to-surface missile. Is this violating the Iran nuclear agreement already?
Maria, if those reports are true, it shows that Iran never intended to comply with the agreement. Iran, you would think, at least in the first few months after the agreement, would attempt to show good faith, whether they intended or not, at least go through the motions. The fact that they are so quick to be flagrantly, really spitting in the face of the United States, of Israel, of the world. They are committed to doing whatever they have to do, and this agreement is just a vehicle for them to to move forward. It was the worst agreement that that our country could ever enter into, and Iran is showing right now it has no regard for international law, no regard for bringing about any type of peace and stability. And now more than ever, we see why Netanyahu was so correct and President Obama was so wrong.
We will keep following those reports, Congressman King, Congresswoman.